Lisa Cook, Senior Director of Career Services Center, and I will be moderating today's webinar. In support of Walden's mission of social change, today's panelists are making a positive difference in the cutting-edge field of social entrepreneurship. We will hear their exciting stories during our webinar, and meanwhile, I'd like to introduce our Career Services Center team and our faculty presenters. So the mission of the Walden Career Services Center is to be a cutting-edge global career services center preparing our learners to navigate career transition over a lifetime. To achieve this vision, we educate, coach, and advise our learners to proactively manage their careers. Pictured is our team, including Associate Director Dina Berggren, Career Advisor Nicole Skalski, who is running this webinar and managing our technology today, and Career Advisor Denise Pranke. Now I'm very pleased to introduce our faculty presenters from the School of Public Policy and Administration. Dr. Linda Kiltz is Program Director for Walden's Master of Public Administration, Master of Public Policy, and Master of Science in Nonprofit Management programs. She has expertise working in higher education and over 20 years experience as a leader in various government organizations. Her research interests include homeland security policy, building resilient communities, and impact of climate change on human security. Our next faculty presenter is Dr. Wendy Anberg. Dr. Anberg is core faculty for the School of Public Policy and Administration, and her career spans higher education, nonprofit management, and business ownership and consulting. Her research interests include leadership, nonprofit management, cultural competence, and international NGOs. And so with that, I would like to hand it off to Dr. Wendy Anberg. Wendy?
Yes, hi. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for being here. I'm going to briefly introduce our featured presenters on the next slide, and all of them are from the School of Public Policy and Administration, also known as SPA. So you see the pictures and just a line of information. The first is Dr. Ahmed Tufiro, then Sharon Jumper, then Dr. Michael Schenck. So welcome to the three of you, and thank you for taking the time and for investing in this conversation. And I will introduce each person at greater length later when each person speaks. So I will now hand it back to Lisa for our poll question.
Great. Thanks, Wendy. So we would like to pose a question to all of you in our audience, and we'd like you to type your answer in the questions box. How would you define this new field of social entrepreneurship? What's your understanding? How is your definition at this point in time for that concept? So if you can type that in the questions box, we'll give you a minute to think about it and to start typing in. So great. So we're starting to see some of these answers come in. So Ben states creating social value. Pamela says she doesn't know. That's why she's here. Okay. Wow. Some of these are they're flying in now. An innovative leader of change, networking, for-profit enterprise, but with a third line, making a change in your surrounding community, using social media to generate and progress in business. For-profit organizations that focus on creating social change and value, creating social change and support, building human capital in communities, running enterprises that, ooh, wow, these are coming in faster than I can keep up. Okay, let's see. Social entrepreneurship is someone who is a social change agent via entrepreneurial methods. Creating personal-driven change with a social conscience. Developing a business that supports a social nonprofit issue. Meeting the needs of society. Being a part of community change. Building business for social good. Creating communities which are self-sustainable. Doing business in a clean environment by considering the society in which the business operates. Social responsibility. Entrepreneurship that involves providing goods or services that are also part of social change. Providing solutions to social issues. Great, those are terrific answers. So I'm going to hand it off to Wendy and hear more about her definition of social entrepreneurship.
Whoa.
It was a lot, I know. They were flying in, those answers.
I was trying to take notes. Wow, thank you everybody for contributing to that. Our goal is to help with the understanding of social entrepreneurship as we go along. And we'll talk more about the use of various terms and the overlap and definitions and examples in a few minutes. So this is just a perfect start to that. On the next slide, I'd like to start with this inspirational quote. I really like this quote. This is from Bill Drayton, the founder of Ashoka, and Ashoka is the largest social entrepreneurship network in the world. And I expect that we've all heard this Chinese proverb, if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. If you teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. So the meaning of that quote to me is that giving someone a fish is good for the short term for temporary support, but it's better to teach a person how to do it so in the long term they can be independent and take care of themselves. Beyond that, though, revolutionizing the fishing industry equates to creating jobs and fueling the economy and feeding the whole village for the long term. So this to me is an example of social entrepreneurship and innovation, and that's why Bill Drayton said that. On the next slide, we'll go over the learning objectives very quickly. And, okay, just a quick background, though, of Walden's vision and mission that relate to this. The vision, just to remind people, is to transform ourselves as scholar practitioners so we can effect positive social change. And Walden's mission is that knowledge is judged worthy to the degree that it can be applied to the immediate solutions of critical societal challenges, thereby advancing the greater global good. So the goal of positive social change is really embedded in the very fabric of Walden. And we see social entrepreneurship and innovation as vehicles for affecting positive social change. So back to the learning objectives on this slide. In this webinar, we're going to look at ways in which social entrepreneurship is effective, what skills one can develop to use in jobs and careers, and then highlight these learning objectives with examples from our featured presenters coming up. So on the next slide, statistics, there are some here, and there are a lot more than this, but statistics here demonstrate the value some people place on helping others and working for a cause. This happens to be incoming college freshmen. And this fits, of course, with Walden's vision and mission. And we'll continue to define social entrepreneurship and its relationship to social change. And on the next slide. This is about routes to social innovation and justice via social entrepreneurship. And this gets back to the poll answers, and I think all of those are true. Ding, ding. The challenge in describing and understanding this, though, is that a number of terms are often used interchangeably. So consequently, we hear, well, what is it? Well, one of the terms that's often used is social enterprise, and that often refers to business with the power of the marketplace to advance social, environmental, and human justice agendas. And the common good is the primary purpose, and the commercial activity is the strong revenue driver. And social entrepreneurship typically involves partnerships and coalitions with other social justice organizations. So it might be for-profit business, nonprofits, non-governmental organizations or NGOs, government, any variety of other sectors. Social innovation then may be the result toward sustainable system change at the root level. And let's go on to the next slide. Here's another quote, this time from Martin Luther King. And to me, this is similar to revolutionizing the fishing industry. He says, the edifice that produces beggars needs restructuring. So the question is, how can we restructure the edifice, or how can we revolutionize the fishing industry, or in general, how can we change the system to solve a problem? So what makes someone a social entrepreneur? And that's on the next slide. So the key concepts of this are transformation and social problems, often called intransigent problems, difficult to solve. You hear the term wicked problems too. And again, it's at the root cause systemic level. And the premise is that communities have the capacity to identify their own problems and solve them, and that can happen through citizen engagement and action. It's not somebody else coming in and saying, here's your problem, we're gonna take care of it. And then using the approaches that are innovative, sustainable, scalable, and measurable. And now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Linda Kiltz to focus. She can focus on what might be your own journey in this.
Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome for being here. I want to point out all of the panelists that we are going to be having today really are people who are social entrepreneurs who have started the journey or in the process of the journey of being a social entrepreneur. But one could argue, and some of the literature will argue, that not everyone will be a successful social entrepreneur. This is very difficult and demanding work that takes a lot of character, stubbornness, and willpower to deal with these very serious, wicked problems for the long haul. And so before you begin this journey of becoming a social entrepreneur, you should really think about these questions. Because when you think about these questions that are on the screen, it will help guide your efforts. And so some of the basic questions are things like, what issues, ideas, and people and projects move you the most? I mean, you should have a passion for the work that you're doing. A social entrepreneur is passionate about helping others, and they're passionate about the issues that they're trying to resolve. What problems are yours to own? What part of the world, what organization, what community and region can you have the most significant difference and impact? And how can you combine your head and your heart to address those problems? The reality is lots of us have great ideas in our head, but if you don't have the passion to do it for the long term, you're not going to succeed, because these are problems that really, really need long-term impact and long-term effort. And then how is your genius, and what is your genius, meaning what are you really, really good at, and how can you use that to better yourself and the world? And so what I want you to think is that many people in this audience, and probably through your schoolwork, will come up with great ideas that have the potential to achieve major social impact. But these ideas need a force to drive it forward that can be counted upon to provide the care, energy, resourcefulness, and stubbornness necessary to navigate the idea through the system. When I talk about going through the system, you have to, as a social entrepreneur, attract and obtain funding for your idea. You have to overcome apathy and opposition to your idea. You have to fundamentally shift the behavior of people in your community and throughout your region. And you have to mobilize political will through citizen engagement. And you have to take care of all these details and implementation of this journey, no matter how long it takes. So not everybody will be a social entrepreneur, but certainly this is a way of starting the process. And next slide. And so what does it really mean to be a social entrepreneur? As you probably demonstrated in the definitions, is that social entrepreneurs really want to create a just and sustainable and peaceful world. And being a social entrepreneur is a means of solving some of the most wicked problems, as we've discussed. And you'll hear about panelists that are really dealing with some of the most difficult problems of our time. Social entrepreneurs are also innovative. Unlike perhaps you work in the government sector, you don't often hear the term innovation coming out of the government sector. But you can be a social entrepreneur while working in the government sector, the nonprofit sector, the business sector, as an attorney across the multiple areas of disciplines and fields. And so I think everybody has the power to be innovative and creative. In addition, social entrepreneurship allows you to engage citizens across multiple domains and people as part of engaging stakeholders and involving and developing these coalitions. And coalitions and partnerships are a key aspect of being a social entrepreneur. The idea of working across borders and sectors and with different groups and diverse groups of people. Oftentimes we work within our silos or with our own disciplines, and so having the ability to do this is very, very important. And next slide. And some of the ways that people are dealing with as a social entrepreneur in different ways. Many of our social entrepreneurs in terms of successes are working on global security and peace issues throughout the world. They're looking at advancing growth and innovation through different activities and projects, like which we will see by our panelists in some examples. And some of the ways of finding ideas is through the UN Millennium Development Goals, which are about addressing long-term poverty and hunger issues, HIV/AIDS, environmental and sustainability issues, and a whole bunch of different ideas. So as a social entrepreneur, you are dealing with some of the most difficult problems of our day. And finally, I want to talk a little bit about this importance of social entrepreneurship to democratic values and practice. The reality is democracies flourish when large numbers of citizens acquire the capacity to shape civic life. And social entrepreneurship really is a process by which we engage and organize citizens to be involved in these large-scale transformational change efforts. And next slide. And I think this slide and quote by Nelson Mandela really puts it bluntly about what it says. It always seems impossible until it's done. And you'll find when we deal with some of these large and wicked problems, it always seems impossible. What can one person do? But it is quite possible when we synergize and get together with other groups of people that some of these major issues can be resolved. Next slide. And one of the ways in which social entrepreneurs begin this process of dealing with some of the major problems, and when the panelists talk, I ask you to keep this process in mind, because you'll find that they first of all came up with an idea about solving a practical problem that they're witnessing or were witnessing in their community, their state, or nation. So they're looking at finding practical solutions to real-world social and environmental problems. In addition, unlike looking at the same old problem with the same old solution, they're finding innovative and creative ways of dealing with that problem. And I think that's what makes the difference between a traditional nonprofit organization and perhaps somebody that is a social entrepreneur. You can have lots of people providing, for example, services to women and children who are victims of domestic violence. But do they offer a program that fundamentally perhaps mitigates or significantly reduces domestic violence in the home? And is there a new and innovative and creative way of dealing with that specific problem? And then fundamentally, a major transformation is occurring. They're revolutionizing whole systems and industries as a result of their efforts. And a great book that I highly recommend, I don't know if it's in our resources, is a book called Social Entrepreneurship, From Issue to Viable Plan, for those people who want a practical step-by-step guide on how to do this. And what I'd like to do is turn it back over to Wendy, who will provide some examples of some social entrepreneurs.
Okay, thank you. We have 3 examples, and I want our presenters to be able to have as much time as possible, but I am going to give you just a quick little addition to the problems that are listed, so to understand the importance of some of these. Bart Wegens founded Apropos, and that's an acronym for a Dutch name that I can't pronounce. I read in the newspaper today that rats are used to detect landmines they're an artifact from old African wars, unquote. And I think that's a gross understatement of the problem. There are hidden landmines all over the world from conflict and war, and there are still 55 million landmines in 84 countries and 8 areas, up to 20,000 casualties per year. They are in 21 African countries, and in Africa, 12,000 people per year are injured, disabled, or killed. So that means every day, 40 to 50 people throughout the world are killed or maimed by landmines. And every year, 40,000 new landmines are planted. So this is not just a problem of the past that has to be dealt with now. And this is a novel and innovative systemic change to train rats to detect landmines. And no rat has ever been hurt. Rats are light and they don't set off the mines. So next slide. And that was one person. Okay, the second one is, okay, next slide please. The second one is John Caslow, and his company is called Vision Spring. This is a micro franchise basically and to say a little bit more about the problem. 90% of people with vision impairment live in the developing world, and glasses could restore vision for 703 million people. Uncorrected vision results in a $202 billion loss to the global economy. And the key is the inability of people to study and work and make a living and support their families just because they cannot see well enough to do their work, often precision work. And their motto is, if you can't see, you can't work. So next slide, please. The third and final example I have is Teach for America, and most of you have probably heard of Teach for America. It's pretty well known. Part of the problem is based on the fact that 16 million American school children live in poverty and lack quality education. 6% of them graduate from college compared with 61% of their more affluent peers, and the result is more people are stuck in poverty. So there's plenty of evidence that children in poverty can achieve at the highest levels. And their motto is, transformational schools can exist in every single neighborhood. So those are three examples. We'll hear more about the experiences of our three featured speakers, but first back to Dr. Linda Kiltz, and she's going to talk about social entrepreneurship skills.
Excellent. Thank you, Wendy. As Thomas Edison says, if we all did the things we are capable of doing, we would literally astound ourselves. And I fundamentally believe that. And a lot of the literature about psychology and social entrepreneurship, it really is about these individuals are risk takers. They're individuals who are willing to not only try new things, but they're willing to fail. And recently I read a book about Alexander Graham Bell, and we know him about the invention of the telephone. However, but what most people don't understand is that he actually failed. His invention failed over 1,000 times before he got it right. And so I encourage people to do things and learn from their mistakes and their failures. And sometimes every time we have that failure, we learn from it, it leads to bigger and bigger things. And if we fear the failure, we're not going to recognize that perhaps we can go on and do bigger and better things. And how can we apply some of these social entrepreneurship skills? You will find that regardless of your discipline or the field of study that you're in, that you will find social entrepreneurs in all of these different and diverse fields. It's not just the nonprofit and NGO sector or in government law and public policy. You'll find it in the business sector and across all different walks of life. People are involved as social entrepreneurs. So I'm sure we have students from each of these areas and disciplines in which you can develop the knowledge and the skills necessary to be an effective social entrepreneur. With that, I'll turn it back over to Wendy to introduce our wonderful panel.
Okay, the wonderful panel. First, I'm going to introduce Sharon Jumper. Sharon is a Ph.D. student in SPA, and Sharon was an intelligence analyst in the U.S. Army and has practiced law for 10 years, and currently teaches at universities in a number of subjects in various parts of the world. And Sharon has published and presented her research throughout the world as well. She has volunteered in Afghanistan, and she will tell you about her work there and her dissertation research on Afghan microfinance projects. So go ahead, Sharon.
Thank you, Wendy. My slide. Okay, my problem that I began researching dealt with what's going on in Afghanistan. As many of you know, Afghanistan has pretty much been in a state of war since 1979. There are the majority of Afghans have never known anything other than war at this point. And in addition to the ongoing war that they have, they've also got other issues, such as the class and cultural issues that are hindering economic opportunities. The lack of income that they have impacts the political and social stability of the country, because if people aren't making money, they can't pay income tax, and if they don't pay income tax, the government can't provide security and infrastructure support. And because of all of these things, the people feel like they don't have any power to fight against threats or any political injustice, so they basically just go with the flow, and they're often victimized. And what microfinance does is it offers empowerment to these people through entrepreneurship. We educate them. We provide loans through microfinance, and they're small loans, you know, $100, $200, $300, and it literally can change the life of an entire family. What I did was I began developing training for microfinance groups, basic business 101 sort of things and small business management like I use in my courses. And we developed these training programs that were then given to several microfinance organizations, and the local managers of these programs would then use that to educate small groups of aspiring business people. Once they completed the training, they were then eligible for loans, and then we supervised them running their businesses. I've also served on the board of directors of Ariana Outreach, which is a organization mainly with Afghan Americans where we fund education and microfinance opportunities in Afghanistan. I've also taught in China and the United Arab Emirates, and while these are developing countries, they are also very much mired in class and cultural conflicts that restrict opportunities, particularly for women. And by integrating entrepreneurship courses into the curriculum there, we were able to help women even in these better off but still developing countries obtain opportunities to be more self-sufficient. I also partnered with the Khalifa Fund in the United Arab Emirates there in order to help several of my students who were in the program to take projects that they did in class and actually turn them into live businesses. The whole premise of all of this is that entrepreneurship promotes peace and stability. It does this by giving individuals the means to generate income. It also gives them a better sense of control over their lives. And particularly when you're talking about situations in the Middle East and in Africa and parts of Southeast Asia, you know, these people, they've grown up in an environment where they have had no control, and their other family members and friends have had no control. So giving them the ability to actually do something positive, have a goal, and have it achieved, that's a very significant step for them. It increases their stake in the community and the success of the community. So when there are threats to the community, they will stand up and defend their community, defend others, and defend their property and their future. It establishes a tax base so that we can get government services. It helps to erode the cultural barriers that exist to opportunity, particularly with respect to women. A lot of these microfinance programs are geared towards women because instead of a job that's going to take a woman out of the home and perhaps upset the family balance and deal with cultural issues about women being out on their own or unaccompanied by men, a lot of these are home-based businesses. So women can continue to do what they do for the family and not have to fight that barrier of going out in public and you know, being totally out on their own all day. It's a baby step that improves their status within the family and begins to change cultural mores. And finally, particularly with respect to Afghanistan, the entrepreneurship programs decrease the grip that criminals and insurgents have on communities. This gives the people the opportunity to support themselves without being at the mercy of a criminal or a terrorist organization who may force them to do things in order to be able to feed their families and take care of themselves.
Thank you, Sharon, for sharing your contributions and the work you do, and it's so inspiring, and I really appreciate it. Our next speaker is, he's already on the screen, Dr. Ahmed Tufero, Ph.D. graduate of SPA. And Ahmed is a Wall Street executive. He's worked for many large Wall Street firms and over 15 years as an investment banker and financial analyst. He's the director of a New York area firm that manages over $120 billion in assets. Ahmed is a native of Ghana and he's a CEO of a Ghanaian consulting firm and is an online adjunct faculty member. And he's going to tell us more about his microfinance initiatives in Ghana. So take it away, Ahmed. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to be a panelist for this amazing forum. As Wendy mentioned, I'm a native of Ghana, and originally the predicate to this my involvement in social entrepreneurship. In mid-2012, actually, in my last residency in Houston, Texas, in Walden, I attended a plenary session that was basically the guest was John Wood, the founder of Room to Read, and I actually took a lot of inspiration from that seminar. So I actually think Walden doing that is a very good thing. Leaving Microsoft to change the world, and I could relate to him when I was leaving back from Houston to New Jersey. Being on Wall Street with my background, moving billions of dollars of assets. I, think that, the best thing I could do was basically leverage my experience for a greater good, especially for those that are vulnerable. Back home in Ghana, we have a lot of regional disparity in terms of North-South development. As many of you might know, Ghana is a former colony of the British, Empire. And because of historical, colonial, structure, the North was pretty much undeveloped because it lacked a lot of resources that the colonial, developers deemed necessary. So most of the development happened in the South, which is coastal, and it had a lot of resources. Ghana was formerly called Gold Coast because we had a lot of gold, diamond, bauxite, cocoa. I think we're still the second largest in the world. So bottom line is that because of this disparity, and there's a lot of macroeconomic distortion from the IMF and the World Bank, the North is left undeveloped, and there's an endemic of poverty. And unfortunately, the most, the brunt of this poverty usually are women. Women are those that are predominantly facing this problem. So what it is that because of lack of opportunities, most of these women, they leave the northern sector of Ghana, and they move to the large southern cities like Accra and Kumasi, which is predominantly very commercial. And a lot of these women, as I indicated, about 80 or more than 80% of them are uneducated. So most of the jobs that they take up when they get to these large cities are pretty much very menial jobs. And, they engage in what we call the head port, basically just carrying goods on their heads for distance. So the pictures that you're looking on the next slide actually speak louder than words. These are the work and living condition of this woman. You see that they are being used mostly as just like the UPSs and the FedEx here. They carry these large, heavy loads from, an average of 12 to maybe 14 blocks, just, to make less than 50, maybe 20 cents. Bottom line is that most of these women in the city, their income is not enough to support their living style in terms of accommodation. And a lot of these women, as you can see in the pictures, they carry babies behind their back, and some of them, they sleep, or most of them sleep just outside the pavement or in front of offices. And you can look to the bottom of the picture, the living condition. What you're looking is real. These are the condition under these women work, and these are the conditions under which these women live. Predominantly, a lot of these women, their condition is such a way that they have no protection, either from any public policy or any public institutions or agency. We do have quite a few NGOs that come in and support them, but there's no long-term objective to basically remedy this situation. So a lot of these women, again, if you look at, the children that they have are very vulnerable because the condition of this woman is, the condition of these children is pretty much, linked to, the condition of their mothers or their parents, under these circumstances. Besides this horrible living condition or work condition, these women are gullible for exploitation. So essentially what they do is carrying these, goods on their heads, and essentially they make it an average of $1.50 to $3, and that's even on a good day. And essentially, as I indicated, the fact that they are women, the fact that they are uneducated, and the fact that they live in this large commercial city, they are vulnerable. So most people take advantage of them because they sleep in the open, they get raped, they get forced into other, social vices as well as, human condition. and they become target of human exploitation, trafficking, etc. There's a lot of reports about them being trafficked to Nigeria and other West African countries for, unintended, social consequences. So in the end, not only are these women vulnerable, there's also a lot of disruption in terms of their family background. The culture in Northern Ghana is very strong in terms of family ties. But when the economic condition is so desperate, that breaks away. These women have to leave, sometimes with their children. They leave their men behind home, as well as with their children sometimes. So that has become a problem. So these are the root of the problem that I saw, and I investigated through my Walden dissertation. Then we can go to the next slide. So my goal was that, I read a lot. Being a native of Northern Ghana, I said that based on my background, I wanted to go and conduct an empirical study to be able to establish the root of this problem and what can I do, or what are the elements that are necessary to remedy, if not pretty much eradicate this problem. And of course, with my background in finance, just conducting my proposal or my preliminary information, I wanted to make sure that I understand. And it's nothing but poverty. And as you all know, poverty is a measure pretty much of your economic status. And when you talk of someone engaging in a business or engaging in any income generating activity, you have to look at their access to capital. And so what I noticed is that I wanted to be able to investigate if there's any nexus or any connection between what these women do, why they are there, and what they do, And essentially I found out that access to capital from any conventional banking or any financial institution is the key. And just extrapolating from what Sharon mentioned about microfinance, that's what I found was key. And again, if you look at the global footprint of microfinance, women are predominantly the target because, a lot of these are home-based, very close to family. They can take advantage of these microloans and basically engage in some kind of, activity that can help them out. So I found out that I can use microfinance as a leverage to be able to influence this woman to return home and also target potential migrants to stay home rather than migrate to these southern cities where they become vulnerable, matter of fact, subject to social and economic psychological abuses. So I after my dissertation, of course, and taking inspiration from John Wood, I said that to myself that you cannot correct what you are unwilling to confront. So after Walden, what next? After moving billions of dollars of assets on Wall Street and helping, maximizing social good, shareholders' value, what can I do? What can I do to leverage that experience? So I teamed up with a foundation or microfinance institution out of Northern Ghana called Tassi Microfinance. Initially, I became a board member, where I advised them how to raise funding and how to, So basically with my relationship, I set up the foundation within this microfinance institution and, target these women in Southern Ghana. And I said, look, there's a lot of, innovative way of basically engaging in profitable businesses back home. And as I got from my dissertation, most of these women told me we were farmers. We were, engaged in other businesses. But because it is tough, we cannot raise money to be able to support ourselves and support our businesses. That's why we came here. We don't see ourselves as victims. We see ourselves as the only alternative that we have in order to be able to make money and go back home to start businesses. So I said, that's fine. So having gotten that empirical, I figured that microfinance could be a remedial tool, a tool that can remedy the situation. So set up, this foundation with my background in negotiation and having access to a lot of people on Park Avenue and Wall Street, a lot of people. I was able to navigate my way and raise a lot of money. So far we are, over $320,000 microloans that we lent out to this woman, an average of $200 to $500. And what we do, we group them and also train them, provide them entrepreneurial skills and training, and help them to be able to relocate back home. And then we try to put them in, communal cooperative organization, and then help them with, loans, and then support them to engage in businesses. Most of them selling, farm produce and farming and engaging in any activity that is close to home and can help them to stay home. So essentially, that was my goal, and that's what I continue to do. Next slide.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh. Okay, so yes, so in the end, as we mentioned, and maybe we'll address this in the, in the Q&A session. I just, have the passion that I think that this is the right thing to do. And again, as I said, each and every one of us, your reward in life is really not, it's just determined by the problem that you solve for others. And I honestly would say that Walden has been a, a life changer for me. Especially this residency and pioneer session that I got from John Wood. It was amazing. And this reflection that I get as a person doing this is amazing. Just wanted to share my experience.
Thank you, Ahmed, for the amazing story and your commitment, the fantastic work you do. And let's have our last featured speaker, Michael Schenck, who is a Ph.D. from SPA. Michael is a highly decorated Marine who has served in 25 states and 30 countries, including multiple combat tours. And Michael's work with the Marine Reserves linked military capability and pre-deployment training with civilian relocation of a town in Alaska. And he'll talk more about this. Michael is also an author and a high school history teacher and coach and counselor. Michael?
Good evening. Next slide, please. This is a photo that I took from a Black Hawk helicopter, and it shows the entire village, well, what is left of the entire village of Newtok. The relocation of this village to a new location on firm bedrock is the basis of my social entrepreneurial research. Next slide, please. All research has to be built around a problem involving something that is currently not known. To the aspiring researcher, I must say, do not be intimidated or discouraged by that. A pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity. An optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty. My problem here dealt with a lack of both policy and knowledge regarding slow onset, climate-induced relocations in western Alaska. Currently, no single agency is responsible for those relocations. However, 186 out of 213, that's 86.4% of existing Yupik villages, are impacted by flooding and erosion. That links the goal to the problem. Flooding and erosion concerns are severe, and knowledge pertaining to adaptation theory is lacking in regards to relocation. If no solution is developed, relocation will no longer be possible once a village passes a tipping point. I got to point out here that this relocation was not financially motivated. Knowledge gained within adaptation theory may be considered social entrepreneurial research now, but I see it as fiscally essential in the near future. Climate change does not respect borders, it does not respect who you are, and it does not respect where you live. This may be a Yupik problem now, but I see it as a global challenge which will eventually require global solidarity. On the next slide, I'm going to trace the path that my research took. As someone who completed exactly one research project, I do want to be careful that I reflect rather than prescribe. A core idea behind social entrepreneurial research is the idea of making something better for non-economic, or at least not exclusively economic reasons. One reason I was successful was that I cared. The sample population cared, and we both knew it. Nobody knows about what you know until they know that you care. In regards to identifying an emerging topic, I would point out that your opportunity might be right where you're at. Your research could be a catalyst that leads to larger population. And this is really important. Real change occurs from the bottom up. I believe all change starts small. The big picture is too unwieldy, complex, incomprehensible. Quite frankly, it's immovable. What you want to do is find something individual and personalizable, and then your perspective can shift to one. The search for meaning, while uniquely individual and therefore beyond my circle of control, might still be within my circle of influence in regards to suggestive tips. One of my very favorite sayings of all time is, the supreme accomplishment is to blur the line between work and pleasure. While this presentation itself did require some preparation, doesn't offer any fiscal compensation, I didn't even consider it work because I believe in it and I have an affinity for this subject. Each of these descriptors that I listed on the bottom bullet requires a combination of personal skills and attributes. Experience is valuable in enhancing both these skills and attributes. That's one reason why I had to use my work as a source for an emerging topic. My research made me better at my job, and my job made me better at my research. I want to take just a quick second to recognize persistence. Persistence has to be the most important attribute to me. It's the catalyst for manifestation of the other attributes. It also allows those deficient in other areas to still achieve. In the confrontation between the stream and the rock, the stream always wins. It's not due to instantaneous competitive advantage, but rather cumulative persistence. On my last slide, I'd like to talk about the methodological and theoretical impact on the Yupik community. NewTalk was an absolute unique window into the social, economic, and cultural impacts of this relocation. To be completely honest, I can't believe more people aren't looking into this incredible topic of settlement relocations. From the methodological perspective, the finding from this research that community involvement is an essential component of relocation has implications on the way scholars view theoretical frameworks of adaptation. Nearly every bit of existing theoretical literature that I had regarding adaptation centered around the victim of the event being assisted and the governmental agency being responsible for successful execution. This research, however, indicates the victims of the event are essential to success. Despite 186 Yupik villages being impacted by flooding and erosion, only NewTalk was approved to actually be relocated. Community involvement was identified in my research as an explanation. For example, the NewTalk Traditional Council has been leading the relocation efforts. Older residents have been involved since the 1980s. Theoretical impacts include adding Western Alaska to the Rational Adaptation Framework. And community involvement was found to be a precursor to effective strategic planning. The relocation did improve sustainability. There's a lot of different forms of sustainability, including knowledge-based sustainability. Without an understanding of relocation as an adaptation to slow onset, climate-induced, environmentally based events, the combination of passing a tipping point and severe environmental conditions would result in disaster relief operations and subsequent assimilation of the Yupik culture. This research here represents a very modest first of many steps that could lead to the ultimate preservation rather than destruction of coastal Western Alaskan villages. The goal of preserving as much of Yupik culture and way of life is not yet realized. There's also physical sustainability that's closely linked to logistics. To that end, the new village of Matarvik has infrastructure such as a barge landing site, Pioneer Airstrip. We built them an improved road and an evacuation shelter. In the event of an environmental event in the future, we wouldn't have to relocate the entire village. This research highlighted the need for more research. A phenomenological study of the experiences of village residents is definitely needed. Transferability of findings in this research is not possible until the Yupik intentions are better known. A follow-up case study on this village wouldn't be bad either. This next point I'm going to make is somewhat controversial, but I believe it to be a fact. Climate change is a crucial variable in initiating relocation, and that's coming from the villagers themselves. Relocation is likely to be desired again, and the impact of confirming climate change in NewTalk justifies my finding that a national framework is needed. Let me wrap this up here. Social entrepreneurship allows for self-actualization. Maslow's hierarchy of needs provides an interesting case for social entrepreneurial research. Whereas fiscally motivated research would provide for physiological needs, social entrepreneurial research could enable one to self-actualize and grow. We make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give. To all the participants out there, I wish you the best of luck as you find your opportunities and prepare yourselves to make the world a better place. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, thank you, Michael. What an incredible undertaking, and you played such an important role in where things might be going in the future as well with this need. Thank you to all three presenters for sharing that with us, and we're proud that you're SPA and Walden students and graduates. I hope that this has given everybody a better idea of what social entrepreneurship and innovation are, what can be accomplished by these means, and I know we don't have much time left. I'm going to hand this over to Career Services. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Wendy, and thanks to our wonderful panelists. What riveting stories you shared with us. And we have a lot of questions in our queue, so I'm going to pick the ones that I think have the widest applicability. So what would you say are the main challenges of being a social entrepreneur? And I know any of our panelists could answer that question, but whoever wants to take the floor and give us some ideas on that, I'd appreciate it.
If I could, this is Mike speaking. The biggest challenge that I have is that it requires collaboration, and especially collaboration where there's not a fiscal benefit that's readily available. A lot of for-profit companies are hesitant to get involved when they're doing it for a benefit that isn't personalizable to them.
And this is Sharon. The biggest problem I found with mine, particularly in Afghanistan, is that you have to balance security issues. If you go in, and I'm certainly not opposed to the military, being a veteran and the mother of a Marine officer right now, I'm not opposed to that, but that's not really the effective way to help the people. And sometimes the mere presence of a foreigner actually puts them in danger. So you have to really be mindful of the security situation and make sure that you're not doing something in your efforts to help that could actually cause a greater risk to the people you're trying to help.
And this is Ahmed, and I'm glad Mike mentioned collaboration, especially speaking from the context of Ghana or Sub-Saharan Africa. A lot of time, most of this problem that we're trying to solve have public policy dimension, and people that you deem to be relevant stakeholders like government or other NGOs or even private sector, usually, if they don't see any perceived benefit directly to their institutions, they tend to, have some kind of, lack of courage or encouragement. And again, that's why sometimes it's just very hard to be able to get data and find people that you're looking to help. And sometimes it's very difficult getting that multi-sector collaboration that you can effectively navigate to help the people that need the most help.
Great, thank you. And a question I think, again, widely applicable. All of the panelists mentioned how you all have had extensive backgrounds in your fields, which was instrumental in your research. What advice would you give to students that may not have such a practical background, but instead have more of a research background when addressing social issues?
Well, this is Sharon. Prior to my actual delving into microfinance, I had no experience in it whatsoever. I kind of learned about it through church. About we would have alternative gift fairs, and you buy somebody a goat. You make a donation for a family to get a goat, and then you get a card that you give a family member as a Christmas gift or something. So I kind of knew about it from there, but I wasn't really focused on it until my older son deployed to Iraq and then to Afghanistan. And as I, became more involved in looking at the issues that he was facing and talking with him, I mean, that's where my research interest from this developed. It was completely situational, and it took on a life of its own after all. So really, all you've got to have is the commitment and the passion to make the change. And there's plenty of opportunities for you to do that and to do the good work.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is Ahmed. I think while it is good to have a background that you can leverage and pretty much support your engagement in social entrepreneurship, the really key issue is pretty much your passion and what you believe in. Having that strong conviction that whatever dimension in life that you choose to help people, and you believe in that, you can research that, you can learn that, and come up with a innovative way of helping people. So I think that sometimes the passion is very key, because one of the reasons why a lot of people or social entrepreneurs fail is lack of focus. So you have to really focus on what you have a conviction in that, and just do what you have to do to be able to help others.
Great. So these questions are related, so I'm going to pose them at the same time. So one question, how can we as students start a social entrepreneurship project now? And then the second question is, I have an idea, but how would I go about gaining funding? For example, if I wanted to offer classes in a poverty-stricken area, how would I find money that would help defray the cost so that I would be able to pay for these courses rather than the people who need to take the courses because they might not have the money to do so?
Right. I'll take this question. It have two dimensions. Number one, I believe Walden offer grant writing and other. There's a lot of resources out there. There's so many foundations that are out there and looking to help, and it's very competitive. And sometimes also too, it has to go through a lot of pretty much review to make sure that they believe in your cause. Your cause is aligned to their social mission, driven organization or what have you. But it's very important to be able to have access to resources, networking, understanding most of these foundations that are available and willing to be able to offer grants for people who are ready to engage in community that they believe in the social mission that they have as organization. So having that knowledge and research and networking is key. The next thing also too is basically you just have to be innovative. For instance, when I started Cash Microfinance, being someone with Wall Street background, I knew where to go for money. I knew where to go to negotiate. I knew where to go and then pretty much make presentation and make my case a compelling case for people to help me help these women. So that while I have the the privilege to have access to this network, I also believe that sometimes you just have to be able to, look out and, research and find resources that you think, and keep pushing the envelope. And, absolutely, you're going to start this incremental approach and, you grow from there.
Great, thank you so much. Well, I think we're just about out of time. I just want to pass one last question to our faculty members, Dr. Amberg and Dr. Kiltz. I have a question. Will there be follow-up sessions to this webinar? So I'm just wondering if you want further collaboration on this topic.
Oh yes, there will be. Definitely.
Okay. I thought that might be your answer. I think this was very well received because we had a lot of great questions, and students said they really appreciated hearing these wonderful stories. They're very inspirational, and it has given them ideas on how they could start ventures of their own. So thank you very much. So with that, I will pass it back to Wendy, to wrap up. Wendy.
Oh, my wrap-up is just to thank our speakers so much for, I just wish we could go on for another hour and that you had more time, but you said a lot in a very short period of time, and I'm so grateful. And Linda has the final word here.
Excellent. I want, again, thank everybody for being here, especially our panelists and for all the students and faculty that are out in the audience. And I wanted to say that we are going to continue the discussion in the Walden art community. If you want to log in that, we'll probably start the next day or so a discussion around this topic and answer some questions that you might have around social entrepreneurship. And I just want to say that the social entrepreneurship signals this imperative to drive social change, and it has this great potential payoff with this transformational benefit. And I just want to encourage all of you as students and practitioners to be social entrepreneurs. There is nothing more powerful than a big idea in the hands of an entrepreneur. And with that, I want to thank everybody for being here. And with the webinar, there will be a long list of references if you're more interested in pursuing this topic as a research interest. And Wendy and I are more than happy to answer questions and provide any more information in the R community space. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just one last slide. Thank you all very much, our panelists, our faculty, and our attendees today for making this such a terrific webinar. And just to go over for 30 seconds some career services resources you might not be aware of. We have a LinkedIn group to connect our students and alumni. It's about 2,800 members. We offer a Twitter presence. We've got a YouTube channel that features career spotlights of our doctoral students who have told about their career paths at our academic residencies. We have a new Facebook community. We offer a blog where we feature student success stories. And then finally, our optimal resume system if you'd like to build your resume or your curriculum vitae. So thank you so much for joining us today, and we wish you a nice evening.
Thank you.